An AI system does not spring into existence fully formed. It goes through distinct phases from initial design through development, testing, deployment, monitoring, and eventual retirement. ISO 42001 Annex A.6 establishes governance requirements for every stage of this life cycle, ensuring controls are in place at each critical point. In the next few minutes, we will explore what the AI system lifecycle means under ISO 42001 and how organizations embed governance into every phase. We begin by defining the AI system lifecycle and the distinct phases that ISO 42001 Annex A.6 requires organizations to govern. ISO 42001 Annex A.6 recognizes that AI governance is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing responsibility across every phase of an AI system's existence. The design phase is where lifecycle governance begins. We document the AI system's intended purpose, define its functional and non-functional requirements, identify the population it will affect, and establish the governance plan that will guide the system through every subsequent stage. Decisions made here about scope, risk appetite, and accountability shape every control we apply later. ISO 42001 requires this planning to be documented and reviewed, ensuring we do not proceed to development without a clear governance foundation. Data is the raw material of every AI system, and poor data quality produces poor AI outcomes regardless of how sophisticated the model is. At the data preparation phase, we establish controls over how data is sourced, assessed for quality, cleaned, and made ready for training. This includes documenting the provenance of all datasets, validating accuracy and completeness, identifying and mitigating bias in the training population, and ensuring that any personal data is handled in accordance with applicable privacy requirements. These controls create the documented evidence needed for audit and certification. During model development and training, we apply controls that ensure the model is built to specification and that its behavior is understood before it reaches users. We document the algorithms selected and the rationale for those choices, record the training parameters and data splits used, conduct preliminary bias evaluations, and capture the governance decisions made during iteration. ISO 42001 requires that model development activities are controlled and traceable, meaning we can reconstruct what was done, why, and who approved it, creating the audit trail that supports both internal review and external certification. Before we deploy any AI system, ISO 42001 requires us to verify that it meets its documented specifications and validate that it performs correctly in realistic conditions. Verification asks whether we built the system correctly. Validation asks whether we built the correct system. We define acceptance criteria in advance, run the AI system against representative test data, evaluate performance across demographic groups to detect bias, assess security vulnerabilities, and obtain documented approval before release. For high-risk AI systems, independent review of verification and validation results is required, ensuring no single team can approve its own work. Once deployed, an AI system must be continuously monitored to detect performance degradation, model drift, emerging bias, or unexpected behavior. We establish monitoring dashboards, define threshold alerts that trigger human review, and conduct periodic performance assessments against the original acceptance criteria. When monitoring identifies an issue, we follow a documented incident management process that traces the problem back to its root cause and drives corrective action. ISO 42001 treats operational monitoring as a core governance activity, not an optional afterthought, because AI systems can fail in ways that emerge gradually rather than suddenly. When an AI system reaches the end of its operational life, whether through replacement, regulatory change, or business decision, we must decommission it in a controlled and documented manner. Decommissioning involves retiring the model from production, managing the disposition of training and operational data in accordance with retention policies, revoking access credentials, archiving governance documentation, and recording lessons learned for future AI projects. ISO 42001 requires organizations to plan for decommissioning from the outset of the life cycle, ensuring we do not face an unmanaged disposal problem when the time comes. Four key terms define the AI system lifecycle under ISO 42001 and appear throughout Annex A.6 governance requirements. The AI system lifecycle is the organizing concept behind Annex A.6 of ISO 42001. It recognizes that governance cannot be applied at a single point. It must be embedded at every stage from the earliest design decisions through to the final disposal of data and models. Understanding the lifecycle enables us to map specific controls to the phases where they are most relevant and where gaps in governance are most likely to cause harm. The design phase is where the most consequential governance decisions are made. Yet it is also where organizations most commonly skip controls because the pressure to move quickly into development feels urgent. ISO 42001 requires us to document the intended purpose, define the scope of users and uses, identify the regulatory context, and establish the governance plan before development begins. Decisions made in design, about what the AI system is for and what it is not, constrain every subsequent phase and cannot be easily reversed without significant rework. The operational phase is where AI governance moves from documentation to reality. An AI system in production is exposed to real-world data distributions that may differ from training data, real users whose behavior may differ from assumptions, and real consequences when the system makes errors. ISO 42001 requires continuous monitoring during this phase. Not just technical performance monitoring, but governance monitoring that checks whether the system continues to be used within its approved scope, whether bias indicators remain within acceptable bounds, and whether the risk profile remains consistent with the original assessment. Decommissioning is the life cycle phase that organizations most frequently neglect to plan for in advance, yet it carries significant governance and compliance risk. When we retire an AI system, we must manage the disposition of training data, operational logs, and model artifacts in accordance with data retention schedules and privacy regulations. We must revoke access, update the asset register, archive the governance documentation package, and conduct a lessons learned review. ISO 42001 requires decommissioning procedures to be documented before the system goes live, not improvised when the decision to retire it has already been made. Now we look at how organizations translate lifecycle governance requirements into practical activities across their AI projects. Lifecycle governance under ISO 42001 is most effective when it is integrated into existing AI project management processes rather than imposed as a separate compliance overlay. The most practical way to implement ISO 42001 lifecycle governance is to embed it within the AI project management methodology the organization already uses. Each lifecycle phase maps naturally to project milestones. The design phase aligns with requirements definition and project initiation. Data preparation maps to the data engineering sprint. Model development maps to the build phase. Verification and validation map to the testing gate. Operational monitoring maps to post-release operations. By aligning governance controls with project gates, we ensure that no AI system can advance from one phase to the next without the required governance documentation being completed and approved. ISO 42001 requires documented evidence at each lifecycle phase, and organizations need to define what that evidence looks like in their context before the first AI project begins. At the design phase, the evidence is an AI system description document and governance plan. At data preparation, it is a data quality assessment and provenance register. At model development, it is a training log and algorithm selection rationale. At verification and validation, it is a test plan and test results report. At operation, it is monitoring logs and periodic review records. At decommissioning, it is a disposal record. Defining these document templates in advance makes lifecycle governance efficient rather than burdensome. AI systems do not remain static after deployment. They are updated, retrained, and extended over time. ISO 42001 requires organizations to determine which types of changes constitute a significant change that requires a new or updated impact assessment and verification cycle. We define change thresholds in advance. A routine model retrain on the same data distribution may require only a monitoring review, while a change to the model architecture, training data source, or deployment context may require a full verification and validation cycle before the updated system is released. Clear change management thresholds prevent us from inadvertently deploying a materially different AI system without appropriate governance review. Decommissioning procedures must be documented as part of the AI system's governance package from the outset. We define the conditions that would trigger decommissioning: performance degradation below threshold, regulatory change, business discontinuation, or a decision to replace the system, and document the steps that will be followed. Data retention schedules determine how long training data, operational logs, and model artifacts are kept before secure deletion. Model deletion procedures ensure that model weights are removed from all environments. Access revocation steps ensure that API keys, credentials, and user permissions are canceled. The governance documentation archive preserves the evidence of how the system was governed throughout its life. Let us bring together the essential points from our exploration of AI system lifecycle governance in ISO 42001. To master ISO 42001 and build a certification-ready AI management system, enroll in the full course. Link in the description. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. See you in the next video.